is exactly the kind of Republican Inglis is trying to reach, and Grimm agreed to sit down with him. But will it make a difference?
I was from maybe the reddest district in the reddest state. 93 American Conservative Union rating, 100% Christian Coalition, 100% National Right to Life, A with the NRA. So pretty conservative guy, right? When I was first in Congress, I totally poo-pooed climate change. I said it's nonsense, Al Gore's imagination. Had a great press conference one time where I absolutely tore Al Gore apart. But then my kids were growing up. My oldest, who just turned 18 when I was running again in 2004, said, I'll vote for you, Dad, but you're going to clean up your act on the environment. Problem for me was his 4 sisters agreed, and his mother. And so I had this new constituency that could change the locks on the doors.
Well, that's
and so
the most important constituency.
I had to respond to this constituency, you know? So that was part of it for me. And then the other was I got on science committee when I got back to Congress. Went to the South Pole, saw the ice core drillings, saw the evidence. What do you think it is that we Republicans have gotten in this spot of basically distrusting the scientists, you know?
I'm not so sure that it's distrusting the scientists. What Republicans are afraid of is if we give more credence to climate change, that it's going to be, you know, the call, the cry for more rules, more regulations.
Yeah, I agree completely. We're trying to change the conversation. We want to change it away from the apocalyptic visions that rightly signal conservatives that here it comes, a big old wad of regulations and a tax increase. We want to change it to a conversation about reasonable risk avoidance. You know, 98 doctors tell you to treat your son this way. 2 say no this other. It's not conservative to go with the 2. And that's really sort of where we are in climate science, right? We've got about 98 doctors that say it's for real and it's human caused. And we got 2 say no, it's not. It's sort of an odd place, I believe, for us as Republicans to be, that we listen to the 2. I mean, we actually not even listen. We seek out the 2. We call them to hearings. We want to hear from them, the 2.
Right.
Of course, in a way, I'm the worst person to try to convince you, because, I mean, look what happened to me, right?
Right. That's
so,
the politics, though.
Yeah.
If Republicans start coming out and let's say that they did agree with the science and they were bold enough and had the political courage that you had, if they believed it, to go forward, and then they lose, well, how many other are gonna, they're not all lemmings, okay? They're not gonna just go right off that cliff. So the political constraints, I think, are a lot bigger than most people would understand. Yeah. And they're very real.
But you're also in a place that's had a different experience. You've had people that have been inundated with a storm surge that some of them may have this sense of need of addressing a problem. That may give you some room to move that others don't have.
And now it is my great pleasure to introduce our next presenter, Sarah Pillsbury. Sarah is an award-winning film producer and social justice activist. In 1976, Sarah co-founded the Liberty Hill Foundation. Advocating change, not charity, Liberty Hill fosters long-term social change by investing in community organizations and nurturing leaders. Over the past 40 years, the organizing and advocacy of Liberty Hill grantees has transformed neighborhoods, launched movements, and changed national policy. Sarah began her film career in documentaries, but she soon switched to dramatic movies. After winning an Academy Award for Best Live Action Short in 1980, she joined forces with Midge Sanford to produce many notable movies, including Desperately Seeking Susan, River's Edge, 8 Men Out, How to Make an American Quilt, and the Emmy Award-winning film, And the Band Played On. She currently serves as an emeritus board member of Liberty Hill and as senior advisor for voter engagement for Cal nonprofits. So please welcome Sarah Pillsbury.
So I was delighted to be asked to come this evening by Rafe. Who's going to ever say no to Rafe? He's been such a great partner in civic engagement. I don't know about some of you, but I don't want to get into these arguments about who I'm supporting for president. I say, well, I live in California. I don't have to decide till June or sometime, and now some present company accepted, I'll say, you know, actually, I'm more interested in voters than candidates. And that's where the Pat Brown Institute and I join hands. I was also flattered because when Rafe asked me to present this award to these terrific documentary filmmakers, he actually thought that I made documentaries. And I was, in fact, the first film I did do when I came out here, I worked with friends on a film called The California Reich about the American Nazi Party in California, who would undoubtedly be voting for Trump, but probably also liking Sanders, actually. Anyway, but for all my political convictions, I was hooked at an early age on the escape from reality I found at movies. And frankly, I thought making documentaries would be too hard. So while I like to think that the movies I've made have done a better job than most at reflecting reality, when it comes to telling the truth, I think documentary filmmakers hold themselves to a higher standard than dramatic filmmakers, and I've always been somewhat in awe of the people who make them. So I'm very happy to be giving this award to documentary filmmakers, especially those revealing important truths and broadcasting them to a wide audience. Tonight we're honoring Joel Bach and David Gelber, creators and executive producers of Years of Living Dangerously, a groundbreaking documentary event series that explores the human impact of climate change. Both Joel and David have distinguished backgrounds. Joel worked at 60 Minutes for 7 years, producing stories with Ed Bradley, Scott Pelley, Steve Croft, and Leslie Stahl, who is one of the series' correspondents, and he won 3 Emmys. David Gelber was executive producer of Peter Jennings' reporting at ABC News and spent 2 years in Sarajevo producing documentaries on the Bosnian conflict. He then went to work at 60 Minutes for 25 years, during which he won every major journalism award, including a Peabody, 2 DuPont Awards, and 8 Emmy Awards. They took a huge risk to leave these careers and spent 3 years grappling with how to cover this subject with integrity and make it so riveting that viewers wouldn't just flip the channel. But they had to do it. As David puts it, I've covered about 10 war zones in my life at 60 Minutes, but this story, global warming, is just as dramatic and more important than any of them. Describing the series, Joel says, "We're not debating climate change in this series. The science on the issue is settled. What we are investigating is how bad things will get because of climate change, how soon they'll get bad, and what we can do to stop it." I'm not a climate change denier myself, and I doubt that any of you here are tonight. But perhaps you, like me, you think more than you do. Most of us are aware that climate change is upon us. But before this series, I wasn't aware of the widespread and serious ramifications. That many of the rebels in Syria were driven to revolt less because of political repression, but because of changes in their climate made it impossible for them to make a living. Likewise, I didn't fully grasp the role that severe drought has played in the refugee crisis. Tom Friedman, columnist for the New York Times, and again, one of the distinguished correspondents in this series, noted that if you're looking for the headwaters of the immigration flood now flowing from Africa to Europe via Libya, it starts in villages like Nidia Magoni in northwest Senegal, where this rainy season that used to run from June to October has been reduced to sporadic downpours that produce flooding rather than moist earth. Soil once slippery and oily is now, says the chief, like a powder. It is not living anymore. With a team of scientists and a stellar crew of correspondents, including Jessica Alba, Mark Bittman, Don Cheadle, Matt Damon, America Ferrera, Harrison Ford, Michael C. Hall, Chris Hayes, Olivia Munn, M. Sajanian, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Ian Somerhalder, and Leslie Stahl and Tom Friedman, Joel and David take us around the planet to see the multiple impacts and complex ramifications climate change is having on us. From the damage wrought by Hurricane Sandy in the tri-state area to political upheaval caused in the Middle East, and to the dangerous level of climate emissions resulting from deforestation. We go with Arnold Schwarzenegger to the fires in Los Angeles. We go with Harrison Ford to Indonesia, where our desire for palm oil and the world's need for it is causing the deforestation there. We go to the Arctic, with Leslie Stahl, to see how the scramble by oil companies to drill in land once buried under ice is impacting the planet. And we've heard today how this scramble for oil impacts the planet every day for citizens in Los Angeles. Still, I confess there was a part of me when I heard about this series that I thought this was good medicine that other people should take. And my heart broke when I saw it. My heart broke when I heard good people who have lost their livelihood and are suffering saying that they didn't need to listen to scientists, but to God. And perhaps we should all pray. But Joel and David have done us a great service. I wish they could be with us here tonight, but do yourself a favor and find the film. It's available on I think it's available on Netflix, but it's certainly on Showtime. And okay, you can find, the students out here, or if you don't have it, find a student. They'll find it. But we are very lucky to have with us tonight one of the co-executive producers, Maria Wilhelm. She, unlike most people in Hollywood, she wanted me to make it very clear that it was really David and Josh who had done this. But I can say that it was her company as COO and executive and president at the Cameron Companies, that without that, I don't know if you would have brought in the correspondence. There's things that don't get done without the right people behind it. She continues to address climate change in her work at the Avatar Foundation, and I am a big fan of all that they do. So please join me in welcoming Maria Wilhelm. Thank you.
That was absolutely extraordinary. Sarah, you have a new job. You must follow me around the world and give that intro. I am truly honored to accept this award on behalf of David Gelber and Joel Bach, and with the support of my fellow executive producers, James Cameron and Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm joined by my colleague, Dirk Matheson of the Avatar Alliance Foundation, which was active in its support of years and embedded with the team to help deliver season 1. A bit of personal history. My uncle, the late Mayor Joseph L. Alioto of San Francisco, was a good friend and longtime collaborator of Pat Brown's. Our families have been linked for decades. So it's a double honor to be here to celebrate with the Pat Brown Institute, its wonderful leadership in Rafe Sonnenschein and his team, and with its guests, among them, my friend Naomi Seligman of Mayor Garcetti's office, a great climate communicator. Tap her, she's in pink. Season 2 of Years of Living Dangerously is about a race against time. David and Joel are racing against time on the production and on climate, certainly, or they would have been here. I'm very pleased to see that Senator Kevin De Leon was honored for his bold and forceful leadership on climate. He will be part of season 2. Stepping back, Years not only tells stories of true climate heroism, but the very making of Years, as Sarah said, was heroic. It was courageous, it was risky. Who wants to hear more about climate? Network executives would say. It's a dense topic. It's imponderable. It's stat-filled. It features dry scientists. And in the way the whole Years team denies, It was seen as a subject of journalistic debate, a little pro, a little con, but where not debating, there is no debate on climate. I met David Gelber and Joel Bach in early December 2010. As Sarah described, they were both at 60 Minutes, jobs at the top of the journalistic pack, the very best jobs in American TV. But they had to tell the biggest story of our time, the story of our climate crisis, a story not being told. How could Jim Cameron and I say no to helping these guys? Their exit from 60 Minutes took courage, boldness, and principle, coupled with the ability to tell stories in a compelling and evocative manner, to really present the climate bottom line, to make people feel as well as think. Years of Living Dangerously went on to win the Primetime Emmy for Best Nonfiction Series, as you know. It's now being seen in some 145 countries. Between April and June of 2014 alone, it garnered about 1 billion online media impressions. We are determined to keep the focus on climate, and we ask for your help. Season 2 on National Geographic TV this fall will be about climate solutions. Here's one. It's rather an uncomfortable subject to talk about after a lovely dinner. Something that years will showcase in an upcoming story on Brazil and the devastating impact to the rainforest, to biodiversity, and to indigenous lands and culture that comes from the production of animal-sourced foods, in particular from cattle ranching. Transportation, emissions from all tailpipes globally account for about 13% of all greenhouse gas emissions. Animal agriculture, the production of meat, poultry, and dairy, account for 14.5% of global greenhouse gas emissions. So bigger, staggering. So think about what's on your plate and its impact on the planet. The one thing you can do right now is to start eating less meat, less animal products, a message Governor Schwarzenegger is sending increasingly. As we say, good for you, good for the planet. Thank you for your environmental awareness, for your activism, for taking climate action, for leading lives of meaning, contribution, and value, as exemplified by Governor Pat Brown, by Governor Jerry Brown, and by the extraordinary work of the Pat Brown Institute. This award is shared with all of you, and happy birthday, Pat. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's an honor to be with you tonight, albeit digitally. My partner, Joel Bach, and I left long careers at CBS News and 60 Minutes to shine a light on the single biggest threat the planet has ever faced, and yet one that is still undercovered by mainstream media and totally ignored by one of our major political parties. It's hard to imagine what historians 20 years from now will say when they look back at the presidential campaign of 2016 and find out how little focus there was on what should be the biggest story of our time. Incredible, isn't it? Joel and I are so pleased to be honored tonight by the Pat Brown Institute. It's particularly meaningful to us because the kind of grassroots civic engagement which the Institute fosters is absolutely essential if we're going to avoid the worst consequences of global warming. We're filmmakers and journalists, not organizers, but we've been on this beat long enough to know that we're not going to begin to turn the corner on climate change until we've managed to put a price on carbon emissions, to make polluters pay to dump toxic garbage in our atmosphere. You've had some path-breaking governors in California, Schwarzenegger and Brown, who've seen to it that there's already a price on carbon here in California. If more states and cities follow California's lead, the next step depending on what happens in November, could be a nationwide price on carbon, which will discourage toxic emissions and encourage investment in clean energy. Putting a price on carbon would be the next critical turning point in the battle against global warming here in the United States. At Years of Living Dangerously, we're doing what we can to hang a lantern on the need for carbon pricing, but it's going to take grassroots leadership on campuses, in faith groups, labor unions, community organizations, and even in corporate boardrooms to make carbon pricing happen before it's too late. That's where organizers and community leaders like those of you gathered here tonight will make all the difference. We deeply appreciate what you do, and we hope you'll tune in to the National Geographic channel this October for our season premiere. Congratulations to Senator De Leon for tonight's honor. And by the way, you'll see him as well if you tune in this coming October. Good night.